Imagine a place on US soil where the Purge isn't a horror movie, it's a constitutional glitch. I'm not talking about a CIA black site buried in classified records or a bunker under the Denver airport. I'm talking about a place where you probably took a selfie last summer. There is a specific 50-square-mile patch of dirt in the United States where, thanks to a massive screw-up by the Founding Fathers, federal law effectively expires. If you stand in this exact spot, you could theoretically commit a major crime, wave at the park ranger, and walk away scot-free. This isn't an internet rumor, it is a terrifying legal reality backed by hard evidence. The Department of Justice knows about it, Congress knows about it, but for decades, they've ignored the warnings and prayed that the truth would stay buried. They think you're too distracted to notice. Well, bad news for them. We just found the map. So, how did the government accidentally legalize murder? It starts with geography and a bureaucrat who probably just wanted to go home early on a Friday. See, Yellowstone National Park is massive. It's mostly in Wyoming, but it spills over into Montana and Idaho like a drunk uncle at a wedding taking up 3 chairs. When Congress created the park back in the day, they decided to put the entire thing under the federal jurisdiction of the District of Wyoming. It makes sense on paper, kind of like shoving all your junk into one closet so you don't have to deal with organizing it. But here is where things get stupid. The Sixth Amendment. You know, that boring text you slept through in civics class? It explicitly says, a criminal has the right to a jury from the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed. Do you see the problem yet? If you commit a crime in the tiny sliver of Yellowstone that sits inside Idaho, the court strictly has to find jurors who live in the District of Wyoming, federal control, but actually reside in the state of Idaho, physical location. Spoiler alert, nobody lives there. It's 50 square miles of nothing but bears and rocks. And bears make terrible jurors. They usually just eat the plaintiff. This implies you can't form a jury. No jury means no trial. No trial means, well, you get the idea. But wait, it gets worse. We're about to meet the professor who accidentally exposed this nightmare to the world, and the government's reaction was essentially, la la la, I can't hear you. Enter Brian Kalt, a law professor from Michigan State, who, in 2005, was basically doing the academic equivalent of doom-scrolling through legal texts. He wasn't looking for a way to kill his enemies, he was just looking for weird jurisdiction anomalies for a paper. And then, he found it. The glitch in the matrix. Kalt realized that if you dragged your worst enemy into that Idaho strip and did the deed, the court would be paralyzed. They can't move the trial, Sixth Amendment says no. They can't bus in jurors from Wyoming, Sixth Amendment says no. They have to find jurors who live inside the park, in Idaho. Total population? 0. Not even a hermit named Steve. Kalt, being a responsible citizen and not a supervillain, did the right thing. He wrote a paper titled The Perfect Crime and mailed it to the Department of Justice, the House Judiciary Committee, and the local U.S. Attorney. He was basically the guy waving his arms on the tarmac, telling the plane to stop. The government's response? They left him on red. They treated his warning like an extended car warranty robocall. Thanks for the info, nerd, but we're busy. They assumed this was all just hypothetical nonsense, a fun classroom debate. But they forgot one crucial rule of American history. If there is a loophole, someone will find it. And just a few months later, a hunter named Michael Belderain decided to test the waters. It didn't take long for the universe to call the government's bluff. In December 2005, a hunter named Michael Belderain shot an elk illegally in the Yellowstone backcountry. Now, Belderain wasn't exactly a criminal mastermind. He wasn't plotting the perfect murder. He just wanted some jerky. But when the Fed slapped him with charges, his lawyer pulled a reverse Uno card that made the prosecution sweat through their cheap suits. He cited Professor Kalt's paper. Belderain argued that because the crime happened within the park's boundaries, he had a right to a jury from that specific district. He demanded a jury of his peers, which, given the population density, would have been like 3 park rangers and a confused badger. The federal court froze. They realized that if they acknowledged Belderain's argument was valid here, they were implicitly admitting that the Idaho zone of death, where the population is literally 0, was real. They were staring down the barrel of a legal precedent that would turn 50 square miles of America into a PvP zone. So, did the judge follow the strict letter of the Constitution? Did he honor the Founding Fathers' sacred text? Nope. He panicked. And what he did next creates a terrifying precedent for anyone who thinks the law is actually written in stone. The judge didn't solve the problem. He just covered his eyes and pretended it wasn't there. In a move that would make a high school debater cry, the court ruled against Belderrain. Not because his legal math was wrong, everyone secretly knew he was right, but because the alternative was too terrifying to admit. The judge basically argued that the Constitution couldn't possibly mean to create a murder zone, therefore, it didn't. It's the legal equivalent of your dad saying, "Because I said so." Realizing that taking this to the Supreme Court would cost more money than he'd see in 10 lifetimes, Belderrain took a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to the illegal hunting charge on the condition that he wouldn't appeal the jurisdictional issue. The prosecution wiped the sweat off their foreheads. They had dodged a bullet. They managed to silence the one guy who accidentally found the off switch for federal law. But here's the kicker. They didn't fix the law. They just paid off the guy who found the broken window. The window is still broken. The glass is still on the floor. And you'd think, after a close call like that, Congress would rush in to patch this massive security hole, right? Surely they wouldn't leave a literal get-out-of-jail-free card sitting on the table. Oh, you sweet summer child. It has been nearly 2 decades since Professor Kalt sounded the alarm. 2 decades. The solution is so simple it's painful. Congress just needs to pass a boring little bill that redraws the district lines. They need to say, hey, this slice of Idaho, it belongs to the Idaho District Court now. That's it. It costs $0. It requires 0 committee hearings. It takes less effort than renaming a post office. So why hasn't it happened? Because Congress runs on the same logic as a college student ignoring a check engine light. If the car hasn't exploded yet, it's probably fine. Senator Mike Enzi of Wyoming famously dismissed the issue, essentially arguing that since no major felonies had happened there recently, it wasn't a priority. That is the official stance of your lawmakers. We will install the smoke detectors after the house burns down. It is a level of procrastination that is almost impressive. They are betting the safety of the public against the odds that nobody is crazy enough to drive to a remote corner of Idaho just to test a legal theory. But they forgot about one thing: the internet. And specifically, a best-selling thriller novel that just handed a how-to guide to every psychopath with a library card. The government ignored the professor. They bullied the hunter. But then, they got absolutely wrecked by a paperback novel you pick up at the airport. In 2007, author C.J. Box released Free Fire. The entire plot? A guy murders 4 people in that exact slice of Idaho and walks away laughing because of the loophole. It became a bestseller. Suddenly, the zone of death wasn't just a legal theory, it was a pop culture phenomenon. Box basically printed a How to Get Away with Murder guide and sold it at Barnes & Noble. He even tried to use the book's publicity to shame Congress into fixing the law. He sent copies to every member of the Judiciary Committee. Did they fix it? Nope. They probably just skimmed it for the dirty parts and put it back on the shelf. Now, instead of one obscure academic knowing about this, millions of true crime fans, Redditors, and 4chan users know exactly where to go if they want to settle a grudge. It's like finding a gaping security hole in a bank's vault, and, instead of patching it, the bank manager just hopes nobody posts a TikTok about it. But here's the nightmare scenario nobody talks about. It's not just about murder. If federal jury requirements break the court system there, what happens with conspiracy, espionage, or biological terror? We are talking about a constitutional blind spot that potentially legalizes everything. And the scariest part? You can drive there right now. So, here is the final, uncomfortable truth. The zone of death isn't just a quirky trivia fact to bring up at parties. It is a monument to American bureaucracy. It proves that the government would rather risk a literal purge scenario than do 15 minutes of paperwork. If someone drags you into that 50-square-mile strip tomorrow, the federal government has 2 choices, and both are nightmares. Follow the Constitution. They let the killer go, admitting that law and order is a suggestion, not a rule. Ignore the Constitution. They convict the killer anyway, proving that your rights are just a piece of paper they can shred whenever it gets inconvenient. It's a lose-lose for democracy, but a win for laziness. So, if you're planning a trip to Yellowstone this year, enjoy the geysers, take photos of the bison. But if your GPS says you've crossed into the Idaho corner, turn around, because out there is no 911. There is no Judge Judy. There is just you, the trees, and a constitutional loophole big enough to bury a body in. And if you think this is the only glitch in the American legal system, well, I've got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you. But that's a story for another video. Thanks for watching. Don't commit crimes, and subscribe before the government finds a loophole to ban this channel.